here, and here we go. Turn 1 of our round 10 matchup. It's going to be Rillaboom and Raging Bolt for Yuma Kinugawa up against Kazuki's Urshifu and Miraidon here.
Yeah, so we'll see both of the terrain-inducing Pokemon appearing on the first turn. Pretty common in these matchups, but for now, the terrain advantage will go to Kinugawa and to Rillaboom. So likely to see one of those situations where the Miraidon doesn't want to stay out on the battlefield for too long, especially with two Pokemon out here who both resist electric-type attacks.
Yeah, both of these Pokemon choice-locked as well, or will be after turn 1, which means that this Rillaboom's fake-out pressure is doing a lot for Kinugawa here. The fake out would be able to stop one of those Pokemon from attacking, most likely that Miraidon, because, you know, Urshifu's not threatening a whole lot of damage to these Pokemon. As a result, Miraidon will just switch out, not going to take a free attack from either the Rillaboom or the Raging Bolt. Instead, there's the Farigiraf. You can run double choice if you have Farigiraf in the back to block any priority. But Kinugawa does not fall for it, does take a U-turn for his troubles there from the choice-scarfed Urshifu as it will position out.
We'll have to see what comes in here. We'll have to see what Rillaboom does as well. I've been thinking that was a very advantageous lead for Kinugawa, but with the Roaring Wind kind of protecting without any attacks incoming, not a whole lot going to happen here. I do want to comment on how great that Farigiraf switch was, where if there had been a Grassy Glide or a Thunderclap into that Urshifu would have failed because of the Armor Tail ability entering the battlefield. So even though it doesn't wind up doing anything, it really made that play much safer.
Absolutely, much safer by bringing in the Farigiraf, which is what is Farigiraf's biggest strength here, is to protect your Pokemon from those priority attacks, and why it is still useful here. Rillaboom's positioning will allow the Miraidon to come back in on the field, reset the terrain, activate the Electric Seed on Farigiraf, and now the Rillaboom will just go ahead and finish up the turn with a U-turn to reposition. But this will mean that Kobayashi has the ability to start leading unless this Smeargle comes out and will be able to redirect, will be able to decorate. Can't Spore right now unless Rillaboom comes in, but there's so many options when Smeargle hits the field.
Yeah, I mean, I love that position because, yeah, I mean, now it's being threatened, right? Where whether it's actually going to happen or not, able to get the Rillaboom out of battle in order to threaten bringing it back in. And, hey, you know, even if you win the Terrain Roar on the Miraidon side, if you have to take a Spore to do it, knocking the Rillaboom out, is it actually worth it? Also very interesting to know on Kinugawa's side, we've seen all 4 of his Pokemon getting hovered there. Something critical missing.
Yeah, you're supposed to bring restricted Pokemon, right? Isn't that the point?
That's what I was told. I may have gotten the wrong notes.
Yeah, this was not what we were expecting from the double restricted meta here, as Kinugawa will retreat the Raging Bolt. Rillaboom comes back out on the field to remove the electric terrain, which will allow this Smeargle to start sporing Kazuki's Pokemon. And with that Moody boost getting the speed boost, Smeargle is the fastest thing on the field, puts that Miraidon right to sleep. Takes that first turn of sleep because it cannot move thanks to the power of Smeargle, and that Psychic just into the Rillaboom deals good damage, but crucially, this Smeargle, it's scary right now.
Some delightful nonsense here as well, where you know, the Miraidon now could wake up any turn, so that's delightfully awkward. He's got some boosted attack. Not sure it's going to be able to use that, but critically does have its Focus Sash still intact. So you know, Smeargle going to be able to shenanigans for a little bit longer. And now we have a very fascinating situation, right? Do you Spore the Farigiraf slot? Do you switch something in and go for a Decorate? Not a whole lot of great targets with what was left at home. So you know, Smeargle's controlling the battlefield, but it's not super clear what win condition Smeargle's going to be able to help its friends work toward at this time.
Yeah, this is where you would really love to have a restricted Pokemon to start punching holes through your opponent's team, but Smeargle, if Kinugawa can get some good turns of sleep here, will be able to reposition pretty freely. There's the second Spore coming out onto the Farigiraf, as Miraidon will attempt to make an attack, but takes a second turn of sleep, continues snoozing, and Rillaboom will reposition. This will allow Kinugawa to pick which Pokemon they want next to the Smeargle, and you know, Raging Bolt could be nice, get those Decorate boosts, get that special attack. And Zamazenta, unfortunately, not the greatest Decorate target for Smeargle, but Raging Bolt very well could be.
And now a very volatile turn, right? Either of the Pokemon on Kazuki side of the field could potentially wake up at this next turn. Smeargle kind of now awkwardly fast, where you'd almost prefer to be a little bit slower, so you can immediately try to sleep something again. Instead now, sort of an awkward position, but protecting that Raging Bolt. And yeah, we've got to start seeing some offense, right? The control is great. We've got 2 Pokemon that can't attack, although they may be able to attack, but you got to start actually doing some damage.
Yeah, needs to start doing damage, and really the 4 Pokemon that Kinugawa has brought don't seem like they are going to be that reliable. Raging Bolt will just go ahead and protect itself to take this Decorate freely from Smeargle, not risking taking any Dragon-type attacks from the Miraidon on Kazuki Kobayashi's side, as Miraidon will be able to try and go for an attack here, wakes up, hits the Smeargle, breaks the Focus Sash, and means that Kazuki will be able to reposition once again. Then hopefully for Kazuki fans out there, that Farigiraf will also be able to wake up. But any additional turns of sleep are really big right now.
Yeah, it's sort of an awkward situation now for the Smeargle, where although Lander's coming in is very interesting. So the Farigiraf going to sleep for 1 more turn, and now there's the problem, sort of, where if you try to use Spore again, if Miraidon comes back in, it could use Electric Terrain to negate a Spore, and you can't switch your own Rillaboom in because you can't switch out the... You're either going to lose the Decorate on Raging Bolt, or you're going to lose the Speed Boost at Smeargle. However, Landorus, as a Flying-type Pokemon, isn't benefited by Electric Terrain, so you could still try to Spore into that slot if you wanted to. Also keep in mind, there's still that Armor Tail on the field, making things further complicated, making it impossible to use that Thunderclap move.
Yeah, and of course, Landorus also has the ability to Terrastalize if it really wanted to avoid a Spore there and become grounded as a Poison type instead. So many different small things going on here.
What a great cover. It looks like that's exactly what's being predicted here.
Oh, that's going to be the cover here as Farigiraf switches out, and in comes the Miraidon, sets the Electric Terrain here, will boost the power of the Electric type attacks from the Raging Bolt, and here comes the Terrastalization. What a perfect cover. The Landorus goes for the Poison Terra type here, which grounds it on the Electric Terrain. Will block the Spore, but means it's now vulnerable to that Thunderclap from the Decorate Raging Bolt. Huge 1-hit KO. What a play for Kinugawa to see.
Oh man, it's so hard to lock into a Thunderclap against a ground-type Pokemon with Armor Tail on the field, but he hits it and picks up the knockout.
What a perfect play there. The only situation you could ever really make that kind of cover, going for the double Spore and Thunderclapping into a ground type. Sporing, as you know, Electric Terrain's coming in, and Thunderclapping into a ground type. Incredible, and that's a huge piece off the field for Kazuki.
Hey, plays like that's how you go 9-0 at the North American International Championship. If you want to know the difference between the games you were watching at the beginning of day 1 and this is how these players got here.
Absolutely. Instead of being 0-0, they are 9-0 heading into round 10. And you can see Kazuki Kobayashi has to spend some time thinking here. Has to be that Urshifu to offer some offensive threat, and again, continue to be able to threaten the Farigiraf switch-in.
And now this is so much fun, right? Where, again, Farigiraf could come in, so you go for the Thunderclap. It's tempting not to. You could try to follow me here. Your Smeargle being threatened by an Aqua Jet, so you can't... I guess you couldn't really Spore either of these Pokemon anyway, but you have that concern. Still, there's the Rillaboom in the back. Could potentially come in here and help out a little bit, although I don't think it's too likely to see an Electric-type attack from Kazuki's side of the field here.
Well, that's going to be the Terrastalization here for the Raging Bolt. That will be the pure Electric typing now. Removes the resistance to Water type, but crucially removes the weakness to a Dragon type attack coming out from the Miraidon. And Smeargle will go ahead and protect its partner Raging Bolt from any damage coming out from the Urshifu, but there is no switching, just going straight for the Thunderclap into the Urshifu, and that means that this Miraidon, forced to target the Smeargle, goes down like a hero here.
Oh no, it's a Draco Meteor too. I think, if that had been maybe the Dazzling Gleam, this doesn't feel as bad, but now with only 2 Pokemon remaining, that Miraidon going to be locked into a Draco Meteor with reduced special attack for the remainder of the game. And
can't switch out to reset terrain.
Rillaboom going to come in now too and further reduce its damage by removing the electric terrain. Raging Bolt going to lose a little damage too, but I'm not sure it's going to care. And hey, so far this battle, it seemed that Iron Tail isn't real.
Yeah.
2 Thunderclap KOs in a row, despite the potential of the Farigiraf switching in or even just staying on the field the first time. Incredible read so far for Kinugawa.
Yeah, and you know what? Kinugawa did bring his second restricted Pokemon. He brought his own Miraidon with the Decorate boosted Raging Bolt, which is going off.
Oh, but last effort here, the helping hand.
The helping hand from Farigiraf wakes up for the Draco Meteor to pick up the KO onto Rillaboom, meaning that Kinugawa will have to show his final Pokemon here. But that does mean that this Raging Bolt just gets another chance to fire off a huge electric type attack. That's the Thunderbolt into the Farigiraf, another one-hit KO out of this Raging Bolt.
This Raging Bolt has been decorated for Mardi Gras, and it is beautiful. It is taking out all of its foes. There's 4 levels of reduced special attack for poor Miraidon, while the Raging Bolt is boosted. And you know what? Stat boosts look awesome. I want those too. And Draco Meteor looking even worse.
Yeah, Draco Meteor being locked in means being locked into a not very effective attack on Zamazenta, which means Kinugawa takes game 1 here. And that game was so beautifully played by Yuma Kinugawa. I can't get over that, like, identifying that turn. We were just kind of putting together the pieces as we were talking, but to see that in the 45 seconds you have, and then to identify how you can play around it and all the other ways that it could have gone wrong.
Yeah, also you had to be willing to do it at 9-0 on stream. Like, I think, if you're in practice, I think a lot of top-end players will realize that's an option. Maybe you go for it and be able to brag to all your friends you hit that play. Actually doing that in this situation is so hard to commit to, but nails it. And then nails the Thunderclap the following turn, which I think that was a very throwable turn, right? He was way ahead, so I think it was very likely to win the game there, but maybe you just whiff that attack, something bad happens the other direction, and you give your opponent a chance to get back into it. But just excellent reads that game. At the beginning, it felt like he was playing a little bit slow, but really turned on the gas at the right time and just absolutely closed that one out.
Yeah, and that's one of the crazy things about Smeargle, one of the things that makes it so effective and why the Decorate variant of Smeargle has been so popular in this dual restricted meta, is it really is a turbo button. It is like, okay, I'm going to start picking up KOs, and then as soon as the Decorate came out on Raging Bolt, one-hit KO, one-hit KO, one-hit KO, back to back to back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we got to see that too. Again, to me, this is why Smeargle has earned its spot on that usage chart, where it's not just doing some of the normal shenanigans. We saw Spore being big there, and I mean, you're not going to get a speed boost from Moody every game, but
if
the
you
Decorate was so cool there, where you're probably not putting this team together like, all right, my goal is to make Raging Bolt big every game, right? Like, this is a plan D or E, but knowing that it was available, executing at the right time, and you kind of see why Calyrex wasn't selected there, which is why this series is very much not over. A bunch of Pokemon on the other side of the field that are very difficult for it to deal with, so I'll be excited to see if it comes in Game 2 or a potential Game 3, and we're seeing it right away.
Right away, Yuma Kinugawa is shaking things up, as is Kazuki Kobayashi, going with the Landorus and Urshifu lead up against the Calyrex Shadow Rider and Rillaboom lead for Yuma Kinugawa. Again, fake out pressure exclusively on Kinugawa's side, but there is always that risk of the Farigiraf in the back, which is an especially tempting switch in front of a Calyrex.
Yeah, I mean, we noted the lack of the Calyrex on this side of the field. We didn't see Ice Rider last game either. That was kind of, and if we assume the same Pokemon here, it would have been, again, the Farigiraf and the Miraidon on the back. So, do you bet that your opponent, once again, doesn't have the Calyrex, and or maybe you think there's 2 of the restricted Pokemon back there and you can play a little more aggressively, although I think perhaps we're about to see it.
Well, there is Landorus switching out, and that will be the Farigiraf in the back. So one of Miraidon or Calyrex Ice Rider is staying at home. And the Armor Tail there preventing the fake out, so a good switch there from the Farigiraf as Urshifu is able to retreat with the U-turn. So because of the Farigiraf switch in, Yuma is unable to get that fake out off, and that's big damage onto the Rillaboom from that Urshifu, which is able to protect itself by switching out. But now we just have to see what this Calyrex is going to do on the switch-in. That's Miraidon, so it will be the final Pokemon for Kobayashi. We see all 4 Pokemon for Kazuki on his team as the Electric Seed activates for Farigiraf. with this Miraidon out on the field and the Farigiraf. It's an entire double switch up from Kazuki's team. The Astral Barrage deals a little bit of damage, over 50%. That's a 2-hit KO onto that Miraidon. Of course, the Farigiraf is happily able to sit in front of Astral Barrages all day, but not if it means its partners are going down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the awkward thing for the Calyrex here, where, yeah, I mean, it's always very threatening for this team to have a Farigiraf switch in where you're immune to the Astral Barrage, messes with all the priority moves, but that's a lot of damage to get the Miraidon. A second one to pick up a knockout, and on the flip side, Miraidon getting in a great time here, blocking the fake out instead of allowing a U-turn as we'd seen in the previous game. It's going to be pretty difficult to turn that electric train off, so Miraidon's got a window here this time.
Miraidon has a window if it can do anything, because it's most likely going to be slower than this Calyrex.
It takes the go right down.
It takes the Psychic, so it's a great position to get knocked out. Kazuki's Miraidon has gone down, which means it's just the Landorus and Urshifu for damage, and Kinugawa's Calyrex Shadow Rider gets the Grim Knave boost, gets that free damage for the future as Rillaboom is able to reposition, so that electric terrain will be going away if Kinugawa wants it. Maybe Kinugawa just wants to have that terrain up for this Raging Bolt to pick up even more KOs.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting maybe more like a switch and Trick Room sort of angle where giving the Miraidon up so easily there is rough, and now we're left in a pretty awkward situation where I wonder if there won't be some regrets leaving the Calyrex at home. The foul play is going to go in there, but not going to be enough to pick up the Calyrex, and now you have a Life Orb Calyrex with a boosted special attack who could still potentially swing twice more.
Yeah, the switch for Trick Room was also something that I was looking for, but Kinugawa, by targeting it down with Psychic, would have made sure that if the Urshifu tried to switch in, it would have gotten knocked out. If the Landorus switched in, it probably wouldn't have taken that too well either. But then, of course, being able to position out for the Raging Bolt really covered for all of those options here. It's just going to be the Urshifu now out on the field. Of course, Farigiraf is here, so that means there can't be any Thunderclaps unless Kinugawa thinks that Farigiraf is going to switch out, which means that this Calyrex is finally threatened, but it can just retreat.
Yeah, I mean, this Urshifu, it does have the Choice Scarf item, so won't need to use Aqua Jet, most likely in order to move first here, but yeah, I mean, you still probably don't want to get caught by a Thunderbolt, so with a Water Terra type here, not going to most likely be able to stay out in the field into Raging Bolt, so you can kind of just maybe assume that a Landorus is going to enter in that slot and play for that instead.
Well, Calyrex Shadow Rider switching out for Yuma Kinugawa will be replaced by the Zamazenta. So brought both restricteds this time. That's going to be Zamazenta out on the field. Gets the defense boost, which could be helpful. Farigiraf will switch out though, so here comes the Landorus alongside the Urshifu instead of the Farigiraf. No Thunderclap though. Kinugawa is not going to quite threaten to throw the lead that bad. And there goes the U-turn to bring the Farigiraf right back out.
I do think it's a clever shuffle, right? There's a potential to get burned there. This time gets away with it, but that's the way you avoid taking damage on this Landorus. I think it's going to be a very critical Pokemon for the remainder of this game. Looks like Thunderbolt whiffing into the Landorus slot there, was attempting to target down that Farigiraf in order to set up an easy checkmate on the Urshifu later. And I think that is one thing to keep in mind here. Farigiraf is very important in this game, right? As soon as it goes away, anytime Raging Bolt and Urshifu are out on the field together, there's no longer going to be an Urshifu.
Yeah, and here is a potential option for one of Kinugawa's rogue terrestrializations. Actually, it's more of a throwback, the Grass Terra typing on Zamazenta. Without that, this Landorus is very safe to just click the Sandshear Storm to potentially hit super effective damage on both the Pokemon currently out on the field, which is why you're seeing Kinugawa retreating the Raging Bolt to bring back out the Rillaboom instead. We'll be able to resist the ground-type damage coming out from the Landorus and potentially heal up any damage that gets targeted at the Zamazenta.
And one thing to keep in mind as we watch the animations here is that that Farigiraf did switch in and out of battle. It was very clever for getting Armor Tail back onto the field, but did cause it to lose that Electric Seed boost. You don't get those back. So for the rest of the battle, it's going to have a normal level of defense.
Well, it also has a normal level of hands to give to the Landorus. Normal level. There's a big heavy slam, though, coming out from the Zamazenta. And
what a read!
Kazuki Kobayashi can make those reads, too. That's a huge sludge bomb into the terrestrialized Zamazenta. It goes down. Not quite a one-hit KO, but very, very close, and that's huge to get that Pokemon off the field and start getting some of this momentum back.
Well, this becomes really awkward now, or at least you can safely send out the Calyrex, but you gotta assume you're not going to get a free shot into Valandris, but maybe you do, right?
Maybe.
Where this becomes a very interesting read. Are you aggressive enough to try to go for an Astral Barrage here, the Landorus slot? If you're not, a Sludge Bomb into this Rillaboom slot would be really bad, where it kind of almost doesn't matter if it's the Rillaboom, who would certainly be knocked out, or a ton of damage in that Raging Bolt, who's necessary for later. But suddenly things have kind of turned around here, and it's the unrestricted Pokemon for Kobayashi who's really made this match exciting again.
Absolutely, this Landorus is key right now. This is wild. If Kazuki can get this turn right, we may be forcing a game 3, because then there will be no opportunity to get that Urshifu out and threaten it, or to get rid of the Urshifu on Kinugawa's side before it can just pick up all the KOs. And there it is, the Sludge Bomb into Rillaboom, went for the offense, picks up another KO, and that is a huge turn here, especially as the Calyrex protected didn't do anything, but did protect itself from the foul play. And at this point, I really struggle to see how Kinugawa is going to be able to get through these Pokemon.
Yeah, I don't either, where now in a situation where the Landorus could just protect here if it wanted. You probably just go for another attack into the Calyrex with Farigiraf, and unless these Pokemon can somehow knock out Farigiraf before it moves, which I think would probably require some critical hits, things looking pretty bleak for the odds of this game being a 2-game set.
Yeah, I do take it back. There is one way I can see, which is getting the double protect here, but that's going to be so risky, but it may be the only option that Kinugawa has to take back this game too, and it does not happen. That is going to be a failure as the Landorus protects this turn. That means that this Landorus cannot be targeted down. Here comes the Thunderbolt onto the Farigiraf. Not enough damage to pick up the KO, and there's the foul play to pick up the Calyrex. And Kazuki Kobayashi is right back in this, forcing a game 3 for our first spot in the top cut.
Yeah, really excellent game here so far, where got a little disadvantage early, but Landorus was always positioned safely. And I think we have to think back to that turn with that interesting switch, where they did a great job of making sure that the Landorus didn't take any damage switching in, and that the Farigiraf as well was able to keep its health high. Had it been the one hit by that Thunderbolt, the Calyrex able to survive that turn. Maybe the end of the game is a little bit more interesting, but preserves exactly the most important resource for him, which in this game was not the restricted Pokemon. It was the combination of the Landorus and the Farigiraf. Sometimes it's not all just base stats that make you powerful in the match. It's the way you match up with other Pokemon, and the less heralded members of the team pulling one out.
Absolutely incredible play there. This was such a tight positioning battle. Kazuki Kobayashi was so far behind before this moment, before picking up the KO on Zamazenta, calling the terrestrialization into the grass typing, and then calling the targeting correctly here, that the Calyrex would just protect to try to stall out the Landorus, and then KOing the Rillaboom instead.
Man, I gotta say too, I mean, how much fun has this been? Before we go to this third game, these trainers are both so great. I think that may be 2 of the best reads in a terrestrialization that we've seen in all of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet here, and they both happen in the same set.
Yeah, it's been game 1, the reads for Yuma Kinugawa were able to take a commanding lead there, and then in game 2, Kazuki Kobayashi just fighting back from the brink of being defeated in round 10. Here we are into a game 3, and I cannot wait to see what these trainers have up their sleeves for us.
Yeah, I think it's such a fascinating team preview now, where like, I don't know if the Pokemon really decided who won either game 1 or game 2, right? It was like kind of the trainers beating one another rather so much than their Pokemon. So yeah, do you just maybe try to pick Pokemon? Do you think it'll give you opportunities to try to hit another home run, or have the trainers tried to solve this battle in a way that I think they can get through it a little bit more conservatively? Because yeah, I mean, the flip side is that, if either of them got the game wrong or those reads wrong, they probably just throw the game right there.
Absolutely.
So do you really want to risk your set on that and your chance to move on to the top cut as the undefeated player at 10-0? I'm still gonna have a couple rounds after this, so both players have good odds of making it to top cut. But hey, wouldn't it be great just to get that stress out of the way?
Yeah, absolutely. You would love to be out of the stress zone of, do I even qualify? And huge change-ups here from, again, both competitors. We finally see both Calyrex out on the field, including the Ice Rider from Kazuki Kobayashi, but also we have Smeargle as the lead here for Yuma Kinugawa alongside the Shadow Rider Calyrex.
Yeah, it's just sort of an interesting angle there where, like, we haven't really seen a hard Trick Room option, but now it is very much available. But how do you go for it, right? Incineroar really wants to attack both targets here, would love to burn away at the HP of the Calyrex, but also has to worry about Smeargle. Both options or both sides kind of threatening a fake out at one another. And then we should keep in mind too, this Calyrex is Terra type, it is water, so it doesn't have any way to avoid being spored if the Smeargle kind of calls not being faked out by the Incineroar and just wants to try to attempt that option instead.
Yeah, the only way for Kazuki to prevent spores from coming out on his team is by switching in the Miraidon. And as we saw in that game too, switching in Miraidon in front of that Calyrex Shadow Rider is very, very dangerous. We are going to see an immediate terrestrialization coming out from Kobayashi to go to the pure water typing to remove that weakness to the Astral Barrage from Kinugawa's Shadow Rider Calyrex. But that is not going to be a thing that happens on this turn, as the Shadow Rider will just protect this turn and get a decoration boost from the Smeargle. That's a really scary Calyrex if it ever gets another chance to go on the offensive. There's an attack coming out from the Incineroar into the Protect, as the Calyrex will set up the Trick Room. It is time for that hard Trick Room mode.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see the Decorate for that reason, but I guess you probably still get one swing here. I just don't know how does that get you far enough, right? You can follow me. At that point, a Glacial Lance and attack from Incineroar isn't enough to knock out your own Calyrex, so at least you get that one big Astral Barrage off, but well, then you have a Shadow Rider, Calyrex, and Trick Room, right? It's still the full duration to try to deal with here. We'll have to see what Pokemon both trainers have brought as well, where there are some Pokemon that I think would be pretty good on either side. One thing that's scary is I feel like one of the way that Kinugawa's team sort of meant to deal with Trick Room is you have these priority moves, particularly the Thunderclap from Raging Bolt, but certainly you can still see the Farigiraf in the back to negate one of those.
Yeah, the Farigiraf is still extremely scary if you are Kinugawa here. You never want to have to risk your entire game on just being encountered so easily by that switch in. This is actually a really aggressive play coming out. The Calyrex going to Terrasilize into the Dark typing to resist the knockoff from the Incineroar. Here's the Glacial Lance, deals good damage to both Pokemon, but that Calyrex probably survives this knockoff now after the Terrastilization. But it's actually a Flare Blitz coming out onto the Smeargle, so no Spore coming out from the Smeargle. It just goes down. Does not get a chance to do anything but set up the Decorate boost onto the Calyrex. So is it worth it? Here is a huge Astral Barrage at +2 onto both the Incineroar and the Calyrex. Not quite enough to pick up the KO on the Calyrex Ice Rider, but that is huge damage.
Yeah, that makes things a little exciting here, right? Where not able to pick up the knockout, but it is a very meaningful amount of damage. But now where do you go from here? See the Zamazenta most likely going into the field. Raging Bolt left it home this time. Probably pretty happy about that, given that both the threat of Armor Chill stopping Thunderclap, but also the potential just to be completely obliterated by a Glacial Lance now that Trick Room has been activated. But, if there's a way for Kinugawa to stall out this Trick Room, then the Calyrex even having to leave the battlefield and lose the Decorate boost at some point would be really threatening. But that's getting tricky fast. You really want to try to switch a Rillaboom into a likely Ice-type attack. The Zamazenta's looking a little bit better here, but there's still two Pokemon in the back that he's going to have to deal with as well. Yeah,
there are two more Pokemon that Kobayashi has not revealed yet. No Protects, no Wide Guards, just a full Glacial Lance will pick up the KO onto the Shadow Rider Calyrex here. That means that it will be a free switch in for that Rillaboom in the back, but at the cost of losing the Shadow Rider Calyrex and offering over a Chilling Neigh boost to the Calyrex Ice Rider. The Flare Blitz coming out from the Incineroar does a little bit of damage, which will start adding up alongside those boosted Glacial Lances, and the Body Press targets the Incineroar, picks up that KO and knocks it out.
That's really interesting. I kind of assumed that the play there was just going to be to trade for the Calyrex. Instead of leaving on the field, I assume there is a game plan here, perhaps anticipating that there is not a Farigiraf in the back, which would make this Rillaboom a little bit more threatening. But you'd assume if there is, there's still a Miraidon, which would be a different way of preventing it from getting off a Grassy Glide. But for now, Landorus entering the battlefield. One thing to keep in mind here is that even though it did not use that the previous turn, there was the threat of the wide guard, I believe, from this Zamazenta. So, you can't super safely click the Glacial Lance. This is the Leech Seed version of Calyrex, so unable to directly deal damage without using the spread attack, and Rillaboom could punish that pretty hard. Both can't be Leech Seed and could easily pick up a knockout here.
Yeah, if Rillaboom is next to Zamazenta and Zamazenta goes for wide guard, the Calyrex Ice Rider can't do anything to that Pokemon, which, like you mentioned, sets up an easy opportunity to KO the Landorus or anything on a switch end.
Yeah, the flip side, of course, is you can't ignore the Landorus, where it is very dangerous. You saw what it could do last game, threatening super effective attacks to both these Pokemon, but it's not a wide guard. Instead, it is a protect.
Yeah, no wide guard, just the protect. And that is just going to be for the Leech Seed into that Pokemon, or the Glacial Lance, sorry, will connect onto the Rillaboom, and it picks up the one-hit KO with that Chilling Neigh boost. And unfortunately for Yuma Kinugawa, that means that it's just going to be this Zamazenta up against the Landorus in Trick Room, and that is not going to work out for him.
Yeah, this is looking real dark now. There's a very critical play there, right? You guess one side of it or the other correctly. I think if you want to close the game out there, getting Leech Seeded is really bad. So I get going for the protect, but fortunately gets the call wrong, loses Rillaboom for nothing, and it's becoming pretty hard to see a way out of this one, as we'll likely see the forfeit walked in, and Kazuki can be the first player to make it onto Top Cut.
Yeah, Kazuki Kobayashi is our first player in Top Cut, and continuing his Cinderella run here at a direct qualification to the World Championships in Anaheim. Again, needs to make it into the top 4 to qualify here, and well on his way.
Yeah, what an incredible set. Both players played so well, so many amazing reads of a really high level play. And, I'm sure they could play this set 10 more times, probably.